Hi there, and welcome to the HR Podcast. This is Linda Misagatas
and Cyndi Manuel, and we'll be your co-hosts. After spending years working in and with HR, we thought, why not start a podcast to support the important HR community? We believe the way things have always been done isn't necessarily what's going to work in the future. So we're diving into topics that support HR and working women as they navigate the future of work. We're talking about professional growth and also how we can support each other as human beings.
We can't wait to bring you insights from HR experts, thought leaders, and inspiring women who are making a real difference in their organization and communities. They'll share their journeys and tips on balancing work and life in a better way. We're excited to learn alongside you and hope you'll pick up some great takeaways from tips and tricks to worksheets that you can actually use in your daily life. So grab your favorite beverage
or lace up your walking shoes and join us for the HR Her Resources podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Her Resources podcast. Today we're doing a special episode. As much as I love our guest, Cyndi, I really kind of miss just you and me talking. And so I'm actually kind of excited that we're doing this show where we're going to do a Midyear 2025 recap, just to kind of reflect a little bit back on all of the amazing conversations we've had so far this year.
How many times have you and I said we should when we're having a conversation, we should turn on our recording because we're having such a great conversation. And so much of it has been about the podcast over, for this year, for 2025. And just as a little reminder, when you and I started was in July of last year. So we are at our 1-year anniversary, Linda. So thank you.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
Do this with you.
Yes, happy anniversary.
So much fun. Happy anniversary, friend.
I have really enjoyed it, and we have we've reconnected with some incredible people. We've met some amazing people, and I feel smarter and more enlightened with this new community of women that we have developed, and some amazing men too. I mean, we can't forget the indelible Brian Myers, who gave such a great did such a great job with us, and I got really positive feedback about him too. So yeah, absolutely. No, I totally agree. I think that I'm really kind of looking forward to diving in and kind of talk about some of the stories that have shaped our year, because that's the times we're living in these days. There is no shortage of things for us to talk about. And I don't know if that's good or bad, right?
Yeah, 2025 has been so, and I know the word disruptive is used way too much, but it really has been. AI, remember you and I were talking about AI last year, and we were like, so we don't really know a whole lot. Oh my gosh, I feel like I have, gotten educated through a fire hose.
Oh my gosh, so
great.
True. Yeah.
I love it as a brainstorming partner or an admin, support from time to time. I love my executive admin, don't get me wrong. So Emily, if you're listening to this, I love you.
Shout out to Emily, that's right.
But, AI disruption, burnout and belonging, the issues that women are facing in the workplace, not just professionally, but also personally, because we hear so much about burnout. We hear so much about, just the world that we're living in right now. And I think it highlights why our podcast matters, which touches my heart. Because we always say that, right? If people get one little gold nugget,
absolutely,
we're doing our job.
I think so too, and it's been fun to have a platform for women, because you and I didn't start this with the intention of creating a platform for ourselves. It was really created with the intention of creating this opportunity for women and really human beings. I shouldn't even just say women, although we are very focused on our fellow women. But it just was the idea, like let's have some authenticity in our conversations. Let's just have some real talk about what's going on and how we feel about it. And these are our opinions and the
Yeah.
opinions of some of the experts we get to work with out there. And like you said, you take a little nugget away, and we hope it does something good for you, bring some positivity in your life. So,
Yeah. So let us
yeah,
know if that's what you're experiencing. Let us know if there's
absolutely.
topics that you might be interested in. And we've
100%.
got some
Yeah, we
good
do wanna
people
hear
coming
from
up.
you.
But
We
yeah,
do. We have some amazing people that are gonna be
yeah,
coming on.
we
And,
do.
I think that you were talking a little bit about AI, and I really enjoyed our episode with Amy Daughten, where we talked about, AI, empathy, and inclusion. What are some of the things that stood out to you?
Yeah. First of all, Amy is hilarious.
Oh my gosh, she is so funny.
She's so
I wish we would
cool.
have done like a bloopers with her,
Yeah.
just because it was so much fun, to
Yeah.
one deal again, dealing with real women
Oh,
issues, menopause, hot flashes, tech issues. Like, I wish we would have done a blooper reel because
I
that one would
loved
have been so much fun. Yeah, she's hilarious.
she is she's just a joy to talk to. The thing that I loved about Amy is she holds up a mirror and she's very real. And so
Yeah,
we were talking about things like we are expecting people to come to work, new people who are new to the workforce, right?
yeah.
So we think, Gen Z in particular, we ask
Right,
them to come into the workforce. And we've always been these helicopter parents
right.
who are scheduling everything for them to the nth degree and
Yeah,
doing all these things for our kiddos. And then they come into the workplace and we're like, why aren't you better at time management? Well,
right.
I don't know. It's
Yes,
because I've never had to do that before, so
yes.
I felt like Amy just held up the reality mirror. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, I
it's very
totally
good.
agree.
What do you like about the Amy Doughten?
One of the things that I like about Amy is that, one, it's always fun for me to see women in tech at such a high level. It's like, and she does it though in a way that is so disarming and unassuming. And so you don't feel like, some people, when I talk to them about tech, right over my head, right? I'm like, I don't get it. But Amy just keeps it real in her conversations. And I just really enjoyed that. And I loved what she talked about is really kind of making sure that we're continuing to lead with that empathy and inclusion, as we think about the future of technology, specifically in human resources. Because what we
Oh,
don't want to do is leverage the technology to a point that we take the humanity out of the human resources side because
yes.
we rely on them to be our people, and it's their jobs, to make
Yeah.
sure that we're creating that. So use the AI to take care of the administrative components, the
Yes.
kind of the tactical. I'm all on board with that, but let's not forget that the reason why human resources is there is it's for
Human.
humanity. Yeah, it's the
That's
human.
such a great point too, Linda, because I do think, and that was something you and I talked about last year early on was,
Yeah,
kind of what is the ground game? What are those tactical things? And then
right.
how do we encourage HR to be more strategic? And I think one of the big keys is what you just said, which is putting the human back into human resource or not
Um,
forgetting that's
Not
who we're there to
forgetting.
serve.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
because I think that we do get a little lost in all of that sometimes and forget that, human resources should be the at least the beacon, the light, right, to guide managers and leadership and everything in remembering to keep humans at the center of what it is that we're doing because it's so important. Which was a great segue. Like, I loved our episode with Christine Ferns on really
Yeah.
kind of leading with heart. And she just as last year celebrated her daughter graduating from high school, and she's doing pre med too, which is similar to what Kylie is doing, your daughter. And so, it's kind of cool to see that. But what I love most about Christine is that family is at the center of her world. I mean, it's clear in everything she does that her husband and her two kids really are her. That's what keeps
Our
her.
world.
That's her world. Yeah,
And
yeah.
she extends that into the way that she leads her team too, which I
Yes.
so appreciate and
Me too.
admire. She talked to us about all the different women who come into her business and how she sort of supports them with the with their reality and with the season of
Yeah.
life that they're in. And so by doing that, by extending that for them, which we all should, uh,
Yeah,
they then give her their best work, like, it's
absolutely.
just a very, what a great relationship that is, right?
Yeah, I
I
agree.
really admired that about her.
Me too. And she's walking her talk. So, she's
Yes.
bringing in women, giving them opportunities. She's also takes a much more unique approach to how she onboards and hires people too. The people that she looks for are not your traditional consultants who would come in who maybe have spent years learning how to configure. She brings in people that are going to think outside of the box, that have a more rounded experience. That so it's really fascinating. And to your point, like she's bringing in women who are reentering the workforce after having children, or maybe after their kids have grown up and now they're trying to figure out what to do. Allowing them to come in, back in, feel safe, feel supported, and then giving them the flexibility because she trusts them to know that if they say they're gonna get something done, they're gonna get something done, and she trusts them to do it, so.
And how smart, not even smart, how wise is
Oh,
that, right?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like hire for what people can bring to the table. Don't hire them, not necessarily. I mean, sometimes, yes, you need some background and some things that you've done,
yeah,
but there are transferable skills in life, right? And
yeah,
so, if I'm a mom, uh, I probably have great multitasking skills,
right?
great time management skills, pretty high emotional intelligence,
Yeah,
likely. Take
absolutely.
all of that, teach them. You can train
Yeah,
people in some of these things,
yes,
right? But
yes.
you can't always find the right fit. The right fit is such a bad way to say it, but just like personality wise and the passion
Yeah,
behind it, that is not, that's not every single person that you interview. So
that
when
is
you
so
find those
true.
people, you
Yeah.
can teach them the skills.
You can. I agree. The right person can be taught. Yep, I
Yeah.
100% agree with that, for sure. Well, and then, we got to meet with, we had Talana, and she came on to really talk
That's so
about
great.
the power of HR data. And, she's a self-proclaimed data nerd, but, just kind of thinking about it, it is what I love about her approach to it is that, we talk a lot about data and we have a lot of data, but what are we doing with it? And
Yes.
again, it was the humanity of the data, not just the hard facts and numbers and statistics that, businesses make decisions on that don't take the emotional component to it, the human component to it. And so I thought she brought a really interesting perspective on that. What did you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think her approach of, looking at how to use the data as well, and she
Mm,
shared stories with us about how she would take the data and then sort of present it back to her
yeah.
clients in a
Yes.
very practical way so that they could actually use that information to make change, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think so much of the time, I mean, I was in HR for years, I've been in change management for years, both of which I think sometimes can be perceived as like the touchy-feely kinds of things.
Right.
So data just puts an exclamation point on the end of this is why HR is so important or change management
Yeah.
is so important. So if there are ways to pull that data together and to
Yeah.
present it back in a meaningful way, not an in your face way, uh,
Right,
in the
yeah,
way that Talona really presents that data, what she shared with us in those stories, felt like, gosh, this is actionable. I can do something with this and it make a
right.
difference for the humans.
Yeah, because think about how many times throughout your career you've been handed a pie chart or some numbers or some data
That's
analysis, and
great.
you're like, "Thank you." Like, "What am I supposed to do with this?"
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
really being able to take it to a different level and say, "Here's the data, but here's the
Yeah.
story in that data. Here's what that data is actually telling us," especially if you take, the, bringing in both the quantitative and the qualitative components of
Yes.
it with
That's
thinking
right.
about, the sentiment analysis and blending that in with your data analysis. Those 2 things together, holy cow, what a story that can tell.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Absolutely. I love that.
Me too, me too. Well, and another, like, when we think about some of the common themes that we had throughout the year, authentic leadership was definitely one of the things we heard from
Right.
most of our guests. And we had Brian Myers on, who came on and talked about authentic relationships in business, and I enjoyed him so much, and I know all of our listeners did too. We got such great feedback around Brian and just his simplistic approach to just, again, being a human being. So it was just really
He's
great.
Yeah, he is such a great partner to me in my business.
Yeah,
I can't stress that enough, and a big part of it is authenticity. What you see with Brian in that episode, that is Brian. You know,
right,
he does not
right.
change, and he talked with us about the power and the importance of relationships, and it's not just
Yes,
to get to a sale,
right.
it's because it's important to build those relationships in business.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
and I
No.
loved, like you said, the simplistic, things that he talked to us about how to nurture and
Yeah,
continue to stay engaged with people. Things like,
absolutely.
putting people's birthdays in his phone and maybe anniversaries and, you know,
Remembering
remembering.
their spouse's name, right, or the
Yes,
names of their children, or that they just
important.
took a vacation to some place and to ask
Costa
him how
Rica.
that
Yeah.
was. Yes, exactly. Yeah, no. Yeah, it was really I really liked that approach, and I think, one of the things, that was interesting to me is that we see the theme that continues to come up with women who are tired of leading like someone they're not.
Mm,
It's like finding that authenticity, but it's not just about, I always struggled when the authenticity stuff started coming out because I'm like, what does your authentic self actually mean in the work world? And then is that like I used to use the way of saying like if you're authentically an asshole, does that mean that you get to just be an asshole? And we're all supposed to go, well, she's just being her authentic self. And so, it's like it's on such a deeper level than that. I'm kinda curious, what are your thoughts around that? 'Cause it's not just about being real, right? There's so much more deeper to when we talk about authentic leadership.
I think there's a certain amount of vulnerability in it. The
Yeah.
best leaders best. The leaders that I am drawn to are the ones who lead with emotion, they lead with intuition, they lead with
Yeah.
purpose. They know what their values are, and so they're gonna align with those values. They're also not afraid to become a little emotional,
Right,
and
yes.
they're humble.
They are.
And I think you have to be who you are because sooner or later that's going to come out, right? You
Absolutely.
can kind of dress it up any way you want to. You can use
Mhm.
any kind of word you want to. I agree
Yeah.
with you, Linda. Authenticity to me, I was like, wow, is that an overused word? But
Oh, wow, yeah.
it's like,
Mhm.
what does it represent, right? How do
Yes.
you see somebody as being who they really are as a leader, as a
Yeah.
person? Somebody that I want to follow. Is it somebody I want to follow? Yeah, because they
Exactly.
have values that
Yeah.
align with my values. They're real. They share information openly. They're not, hold it close to the vest. It's
Right,
all
right.
very, yeah, they're just somebody that I feel like I can align with. And I've
Me
been very
too.
fortunate to get to work with, several of those leaders across my career.
I agree with you. And I think, it was like one of the things that I took away is that leadership isn't one size fits all, right? So you can't just
Mhm.
read a book on leadership and now that's the leadership style and that's what you're supposed to do. And that, seeing more women stepping into their own, like I loved when Kristen Sadler said to us that she hates it, but she's a crier. And I know you and I have talked about this before. It takes a lot to get you there, but you can show some emotion too, and that's okay. And what I loved is she said that when her mentor told her, "Do not apologize for crying." It's like it was a moment, it was real, it was human, and it did not mean you were weak or incapable or ineffective. It simply meant something overcame you to the point that it drew you to tears, and that's a part of who you are. And please do not apologize for that.
Yeah, and that resonated with me because I told her that I get that way sometimes
Yes.
too, and she was like, "Don't apologize, Cindy."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I that has been something that has come back for me a couple of times since
Yeah,
we
I
got
love
to meet
that.
with Kristin.
See, we
Yeah,
get to learn great lessons and apply them in our
so
lives.
many lessons.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I totally agree. Another common theme that we were hearing about is burnout, boundaries, and belonging. And so you brought up such an amazing point on one of our episodes around burnout as it relates to the fact that, because I was challenging a little bit to say, well, is burnout just another one of those catchphrase things, like, oh, we're all burned out? Because I was arguing that maybe the workload hadn't actually increased. But you brought up a really big point in that maybe it's not about the workload increasing as much as it is the environment in which we're working today.
Mhm.
And the overload of information and the data coming at us from a
All
thousand
sides.
different
Yeah.
places, and like you mentioned, like even our parents or our grandparents went to work, did their job, came home, and that was the end of their workday. Like they rarely were, they nobody's calling them on their cell phone, nobody was
That's right.
asking them to log in for a meeting at 7 o'clock at night.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. And so maybe that is what is causing so much focus on burnout, is it's not so much that the work has changed as much as the environment in which we're doing the work has drastically changed.
And it's funny because I think of my currency as energy.
Yeah.
So I think you've got money, time, and energy are three
Mhm.
sort of currencies, I guess, if you
Right.
will. To me, in my phase of life, my stage of life, I've thought a lot about that. For a long time, I thought time really is my currency. And then I thought, wait a second, I actually think energy is my currency. So, how am I going to
Yeah.
spend that so that
Yep.
at the end of the day, I don't feel burnt out? So, there are
Yeah.
times, and my millennial son is the one who he and his wife do this from time to time. They will step away from their cell phones, they will not watch the news. They take a break from
That's
that,
just
and
like
I think
crazy
that's
talk, right?
healthy.
Um,
Yeah, and when I started to do that from time to time, I was like, "Wow, I feel like I can
yeah.
breathe. I feel
Yeah.
like I'm not as worried about things in the world that I have no control over. I don't have
Absolutely.
to be aware of 100% of everything that's going on. What can I do for locally, or what can I do in my world for my family, for people I care about, and for my community that I do have control over?" And so, and of course, you're going to look at and hear about things that are happening globally, of course. But
Yeah, no,
yeah,
it's
you
true.
do have to
Well, and I
find.
think, what the point that you're making there too is that there's just a direct correlation between burnout and boundaries, right? If you don't establish
True.
boundaries, because you saw that happen when all of a sudden everybody was now a work from home person. If you'd never worked from home before, people really struggled, and burnout was real then because they didn't know how to establish like
Away.
office hours or to step away, because suddenly your office was your home. And so you're like, oh, well, that's okay. I'll go cook dinner and then I'll go jump back on my computer and I'll do some more work. Or,
Yeah.
I'll roll out of bed at 5 a.m. and start working. And then, and then before you know it, it's, noon and you haven't taken a break or anything. And so, like, people really struggled to establish those boundaries. And in the tech world we live in today, one of the things I do like reflect on that I wish I would have done throughout my career is to do the two cell phone thing where I had a work cell phone
Right.
and a personal cell phone.
I
I've had the
remember
same
you did
cell
it at
phone
the
for
city.
so long. I did for a little while. Yes, I did
Yeah.
for a little while. Yeah. But it's like you have this without having that separation, it's hard to walk away from the work, right? Because even though I can say, "Well, I'm not gonna check my emails." Yeah, I am, because it's on my phone and I can do it and it's right there. I'm not
Yeah.
disciplined enough to just say to myself, "I'm not gonna do it and I'm not gonna do it." And so creating those technology boundaries is something
Yes.
else that, is so important, because, like, if you answer that email at 8 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night, is anything going to happen before the next morning?
I
No, it
know.
isn't,
You know what
so
somebody said to me at one point recently was when someone sends you an email, they're asking you to do something.
yeah,
So or they're putting on you something they need you to do. And
right.
I'm like, "Okay." That's been encouraging to me to not I got
Yeah,
a new cell phone recently. I did not set it up to automatically ping me when emails come
yes,
in
yes, yes,
because
yes.
you're right. I
Yep.
don't I can't if it's in my face, I'm gonna take a look at it.
Yep, I'm like Pavlov, right?
Yeah,
Pavlov's dog. I hear the
yeah,
little ding, and I think I've gotta do something about it. And so,
yeah.
yes, I don't know how
Funny
to not
enough,
react
our
to it.
dog does that, right? So he hears certain sounds coming from my husband's cell phone,
Uh-huh.
and he's like he looks up, looks right so
Yeah.
exactly what you said, and
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
wanna be like Buckley. I would rather just,
Exactly.
you know
Yes.
and I
Have a
have
little
my
free
phone on
will.
silence. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's so true. Well, and it's so disruptive in
It
our
is.
work world too. We're on information overload, which I'm sure is driving that as well. And so, and it's kind of funny because I do think that organizations out there need to take a step back and reflect a little bit because they're talking out of both sides of their mouths. And this is
Mhm.
maybe where human resources could help a little bit in the fact that you've got them saying, "Oh, you should establish boundaries and take your vacation and,
Work-life balance.
work-life balance and all of this." And yet the work environment is actually not conducive to that because you have instant messaging, you have text, you have emails. And think about in a remote world that we live in, most of your communication is coming through email or instant messaging. So, can we be disciplined enough and can we allow people the ability to say, I'm going to block this much time and it's blocked. So that means I'm doing this during that
Of
time.
this work.
And that unless the world is literally on fire, you can't bug me during that 1 hour of time that I've blocked. Know that I'm not going to respond and that's going to be okay. And yet that's
Mhm.
not the reality of what happens in most work
I
environments.
love
So
that idea, the whole time blocking, right? But actually
yeah.
being true to that time blocking. And I would even take it one step further, which would be have an hour that you block in your day. And maybe it's 15-minute segments, maybe it's half-hour segments, or maybe it's an hour that is you time. So
Yes.
you step away,
Yep.
leave the phone, and maybe read a book, take a walk,
Yeah.
do
Just
something
recharge a little bit.
new. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, no, I totally agree.
At the Delta Principle, we are transforming the way you experience change. Have you ever experienced an organizational change where your employees pushed back because it was too much, too fast, or they just didn't understand why they couldn't do things the way they've always done them? What about where communication was non-existent or unorganized, with important updates getting lost in the shuffle, leaving people confused? And have you ever experienced change where morale was at an all-time low because the change felt overwhelming and not aligned with your organization's culture? If you are being asked to lead an important organizational change, especially if you're new to leading change, or if you're just feeling overwhelmed, the Delta Principle is here to support you. We work closely with you as a trusted partner, co-creating real-world solutions to address your unique challenges, and we equip you and your organization for future success. Are you gearing up for your next transformation journey or exploring ways to strengthen your change management skills? Then let's connect. This year, we're thrilled to introduce Leading Change, a training designed for leaders driving organizational initiatives, and Navigating Change, a training tailored to empower teams and adapting to change with confidence. Our coaching and training sessions are fully customizable to meet your organization's unique needs. Reach out today to see how we can partner with you to make your next change a success. You can find us on LinkedIn or by emailing us at info@thedeltaprinciple.com.
Well, and another interesting thing that we saw happen, which interesting doesn't even do it any justice, but it's around the whole belonging conversation. We saw the changes that happened in Washington, D.C., and, we're not a political show, so we won't make this political, but there's the reality of what happened across the world where we watched. something that has been around since, with our amazing guest, Stacy Lewis, and talking about something that has been in place since the 60s. And we've made tremendous progress and should never been politicized the way that it was. And now we're back in a situation where belonging is something that is going to be interesting to see what the future holds, because we're already seeing changes coming down. There's an executive order that says that minority and women-owned businesses no longer need to have any special status, because we apparently overnight we now live in a world where everyone is treated equally and everybody's going to be given all the same opportunities and rights, and everything is going to be very kumbaya. Now I don't believe that, but but that's
As
what
a woman-owned
that's
business,
what,
I
yeah,
would agree with you.
as a woman-owned business, exactly, that's it.
Yeah,
And so it is going to be really curious to see the future of DEI. And just as a little sneak peek, I mean, we are going to have a future episode to talk a little bit more about where did organizations and human resources go wrong that kind of caused some of the demise of
the
our diversity,
pendulum swing.
equity. Yep,
Yeah,
exactly. Yep,
yeah,
exactly.
for
So,
sure.
but I'm curious, like, what do you think about that? Because I'm
Oh,
not totally convinced that all of a sudden the statistics do not support that
that's
we
right.
are all of a sudden in a world of inclusion and belonging, and that everybody is treated the same way.
Talona would be very proud of you, Linda.
That's
Statistics,
right. That's
data.
right. The statistics and the
I
data
mean,
do not prove the
honestly, let's look
story.
at
It
the
is.
data,
Yeah, look at the
right?
data.
And
Exactly.
what story is it telling? Back to what you were saying before,
Yeah.
that conversation with Stacy Lewis really moved me. And if you
Me
haven't
too.
watched the whole thing,
You
you'll
got
see at
to.
the very end, Linda was like, Cyndi, you're getting choked up. I was. I
Yes.
Stacy Lewis is she's a force, and
She
she is
is.
a very passionate person when she talks about belonging, which really was what it
Yes.
was, and reframing our conversations. I took
Yeah.
so much away from that
I
particular
did too.
episode.
Me too.
Yeah, I very much appreciated what she said about, words matter. And she even challenged us on some words like it's not, building an awareness, it's an acknowledgement.
Yes.
Whether I agree with you or not, I
Mhm.
acknowledge this is how you feel. And she even
Absolutely.
talked about, she had some clients who she went and spoke with, some CEOs
Yeah.
who it was a room full of people that did not look like her.
Yeah.
And she said that afterwards, one of the men came up to her and said, "You know what, Stacy, that was really powerful. I want to basically be better with my community about these conversations." Because he
Yes.
also doesn't have a choice about what he looks like or the age that
Oh,
he's at, clearly. So
right.
he wanted to ask her how to have those conversations. How
Yeah.
beautiful is that? So it just opened up
Totally
that
agree.
conversation.
Yeah.
Um, I think she is the people that Stacy Lewis touches, their hearts are opening.
I agree with you because her whole approach is so different. And I even liked her reframing of that. It's not a male dominated, it's a saturated. And I was like, what a great way to say that. It is that is part of the problem is it's not necessarily domination, it's saturation. And I thought just that reframing of those sorts of things,
Those
it
shifts.
opens up the conversation to your point.
Uh,
That's the difference because Stacy doesn't have to have those conversations. She lives it. She's a Black woman living in a predominantly white environment, right? I mean, that
yeah,
is the world she lives in,
yeah,
and yet the way that she approached it, and I loved everything she said, is that she wants to have the dialogue. She wants to talk about things. Now, she did point out, though, if you're not going to go and do the work, then yes, then the relationship is, it's
that's
one-sided
right.
and now move on. But
Yeah,
but if you want to do the work and you really are authentic and genuine in what you want to do, she's
absolutely.
always going to have the conversation. And I love what she said about all of those things. And it just touched
I
my heart
agree.
so much. Yeah,
I
that was a
agree.
really
It
great
was a
one.
great one. Yes.
And, another thing that we saw was, rewriting the rules, right? Like, whether it's from
Yeah.
career paths or leadership expectations, traditional HR, like so many women are just overdoing things the old way. And we
Hey,
heard that in so many of our conversations. And I loved what we were hearing around that, listen, we don't have to do things the way that they've always been done, and we're not
that's
gonna.
right.
Yeah,
Challenge the norms. Let's build workplaces that reflect real life. So you and I had a conversation, or more than one conversation, about the whole notion of work-life balance, right?
right.
There's no
Yeah.
balance to me as like 50-50,
Yep.
whatever. Now, there's no such thing as that. So,
Mm-mm.
but how do we create more of a workplace that reflects real life?
Yeah,
Because our future depends on that. And
it does.
as additional generations with different value systems, because we are all very different, not to kind of generalize, but
Right.
you know, we want to make sure that as Gen Z are coming
Yeah.
into the workplace, as an example, that we are creating an environment where they feel that there's a lot of purpose. There's a lot of them that don't even want to move into, managerial or
So
leadership roles,
true.
right?
Yeah.
Because they do want to have a quality of life. So, how can we create an environment that encourages that, and that,
Yeah.
so yes, you're absolutely right. There were so many conversations about rewriting the rules, which
I
just
loved it.
speaks to my heart. Yeah, I'm
Me
so
too.
excited about that stuff.
Oh my gosh, me too. And I loved our episode with Kristin Scroggin. She's one of my most favorite people because she just she's just Kristen. Like she's all of her conversations and talks are backed in research. Like the woman
Yeah,
was a professor. Like she didn't, it's not like she just made this stuff up and then created a marketing out of it and just went out to talk about multi-generational workforces and how that's impacting. She really is she's genuine in it, and it does make you, if you're willing to hear it,
yes,
you do some self-reflection and you're like, "Ah, I get what she's saying," because she's not saying segregate the generation. She's not saying treat the generations differently. She's saying accept the fact that
understand.
generational norms do affect how we do things, how we react to things, and let's just admit it, accept it, and then we can all work together more effectively, and I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and she's a very no nonsense kind of
Very no
person.
nonsense, yeah, and if you
Yes.
want, there's a great post out there, Barrett and Green, who are 2 of my favorite journalists. We're gonna have them on our show as well. They're a husband and wife team that have been reporting, for a long, long time, and they had posted out an article or like a guest blog from someone on multi-generational, and it was contradictory to what Kristen says, so I tagged Kristen in the post because I wanted to get her side of the story, and you know what was so cool is it opened up an amazing dialogue. Now they didn't land in agreement with one another and they don't have to, right?
Which is
And so,
okay.
but
Yeah.
exactly, that's the whole point, and that we should be able to have a open dialogue and not necessarily agree with each other, but be respectful. But if you're interested, go check it out. You can just search on LinkedIn under Barrett and Green, and you'll see and you should search them anyway because they've got amazing stories. So, plus they're just incredible human beings. So no, I think that'll be really good. But I'm just kind of curious, when you think about and you kind of reflect back, which of these themes do you think kind of challenge you the most?
I mean, I think I go back to the Stacy Lewis.
Yeah.
It just was a really different way of, because I've been a bit frustrated by some of the stuff that I feel like has been pulled back. I've had
Yes, me
conversations with
too.
dear friends about, gosh, we felt like we had gotten so much further. And now I personally feel like we've taken some steps back. So that episode with Stacy Lewis caused me to sort of rethink some things, and also to take some responsibility to say, you know what? It's also up to me to have some of these conversations, these honest conversations, but in a respectful way, giving people grace, even if they don't 100% agree with me. And she gave me some framing on how to
Yeah,
have
yeah.
those conversations. So I think that was probably why I was so emotionally touched by the end of that too. Plus, she told us the story about her mom and how her mom,
Yes.
I think she's Hispanic and
Yeah,
was
Costa Rica. She's from
that's right.
Costa Rica, and then Black. And I think she had. Yeah, you're right. It was a very
Yeah,
yeah
her mom was told basically stop talking to her daughter, which was Stacy at the time,
um,
in Spanish. And
yeah
so, Stacy felt that that was something that was taken from her and was a genuine
absolutely
part of who she was, which is one of the reasons that she does what she does. So it's very impactful for me anyway. How about for
yeah.
you, Linda? Which one really kind of made you think?
I love all of that too. So many of them touch me. One of the things, because I think it's so impactful to me, is I'm really trying to figure out this burnout thing, right? That's
Yeah.
the one that I'm really unpacking for myself because I do not practice any of the things I talk about on this show. So, I do not establish boundaries.
Oh,
I don't practice good self-care.
no,
Like
it's
all of
not
the things that we talk
sentence.
about, yeah, don't do any of those things. And so that's the piece that I'm really trying to get my
Wow.
arms around is thinking about how can I kind of change my approach? How do I make those modifications in myself? Because I mean, I love working. I love what I do. So that's part of it.
Sure.
But I also recognize that, for a lot of my life, I've put everybody else on the back burner to put my job first. And as a result of that, now as I've gotten older and I self-reflect, I think about some of those things and I'm like, what can I do to just make sure that this next chapter in my life that maybe it doesn't have
Yes.
to be quite the same and I can still achieve all the same amazing things and do all the things I want to do, but I could find a
Yeah.
little balance in my life, right? And
I
so
love
that,
that,
that
Linda.
that's been one that's really kind of been a focus of mine on that. But all of them
Yes.
touch me. I mean, gosh, from authentic leadership to multi generations to the AI, like Ebony did such an
Oh
amazing
my
job. And
goodness.
if you're not
Yes.
following Ebony out on LinkedIn, you got
Shout
to
out
check
to
her out
Ebony.
because,
Yeah.
man, what a powerhouse. And again,
So cool.
just another amazing person who is out there just spreading good information and knowledge and educating us all.
Yeah.
So I think,
I feel
it's hard to pick. Yeah.
yeah. I feel like we kind of put some stuff out there early on. Like I
I think so
remember
too.
speaking of Ebony, I was like thinking back on when you and I were talking about AI and it just felt huge to me. And then we had Ebony came into our
Yeah.
lives, came
Yeah.
onto the podcast and spoke about AI, and I've been following her posts and things, and
Yes.
she just makes it very real, which
Agree.
I so appreciate.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think we were also we've had a lot of conversations, obviously, when you talk about HR, about kind of attracting and retaining good talent
Yes.
and
Yep.
taking care of people. And when we had Tisha Deaton on the podcast, we talked about, the engagement and the retention as a
Yes.
result
Yes.
and how they went from a 30%, 30 something percent retention to an 89, I think it was,
Which is
percent retention.
unbelievable. Yeah.
Crazy.
I
And it's
know.
because they listened to their
Yeah.
leaders, listened to their employees, and incorporated some of that stuff and continue to do so. Um,
Yeah.
so the retention just flew through the roof. So, like some of the things that we brought up early on, we were like, gosh, I'd be really curious to hear more about this from some experts. Lo and
Yeah.
behold, here came
Here
the
they
expert.
were. Absolutely. No, it was so I totally agree.
Yeah.
We have. And I love what you said because Ebony did give me a whole new perspective on AI as well, right? So, I mean, while I wasn't totally afraid of it, I was apprehensive, to think about what is AI going to do and how can it be effectively used. So now I try to incorporate in all of my conversations, especially with other colleagues that I talk to who are maybe afraid of AI or who are afraid that their jobs are going away in helping them maybe rethink their approach to AI and that it's kind of like, I joke I was so resistant to getting rid of my BlackBerry. I loved my BlackBerry. I waited until they would not let you use the BlackBerry anymore and I had to switch to an iPhone. And that you find sometimes we're so resistant to things initially because we don't understand them. It's comfortable. We find ourselves in these places, and it's not any different with AI. We're
That's right.
just feeling uncomfortable right now. We just need
Overwhelming.
to get used to it because it's not going away. It is
Yes.
here, it is going to stay, and it's going to become a part of our lives. So we can either figure out how to make it a productive part of our lives, or we can kind of have this element of fear and we're going to create an imbalance in our own lives. So,
Yeah. So I think that takes it full circle where find the person, back to what you were just saying, find the
yeah.
person or people that you feel like you can follow, podcast or
Yes.
LinkedIn or whatever it happens to
Absolutely.
be to educate yourself. Have those
Yeah.
I love that you're having those conversations with people,
Yeah.
so that they're not concerned. It helps
Oh,
alleviate some of their worry. But then it's also like, you know what? I actually felt that way too. So I can
yes.
appreciate where you're coming from. And check this lady out, this Ebony, or,
Yes.
check out this podcast episode or whatever it happens to be. But yeah,
Absolutely.
I agree. Uh,
No.
Back to what you were saying before too, Linda, about the burnout and
Yeah.
how you're not really following what first of all, thank you for being so honest about that. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. I think it's a challenge. We can talk about it
Yeah.
till we're blue in the face, but to actually
Yep.
talk about it and do something are sometimes two different things. So I think uh, we as we think about what we would like to talk about in the future, one
Yeah.
of the things that I sort of jotted down were things like sabbaticals, taking pauses, and taking breaks in your career. There's
I
a
love
lot
that.
of people, and I think Kristin Scroggin actually talked about this in our demographic, age wise, Gen
Yeah.
Xers, who are talking about early retirement. And so I think if we could have more conversation about that, I think it's very interesting and I think it would
So
help
too.
touch beyond Gen X, but I just think it'd be a very interesting topic in the
Me
future.
too. I love that, and we're also going to have, a conversation on financial wellness. We heard from our
So
listeners that,
excited about that.
they'd really like to, like, how do you do these things? And so, we'll approach it from multiple, ways of thinking about it, like, I wanna become an entrepreneur. Well, we have some amazing entrepreneurs. One of them is my co-host who can talk about how do you prepare yourself to make that move out of corporate America into it. We're going to have an expert who's going to come on and talk about financial wellness, and that will help, to your point, all generations of women who are trying to think about how do we effectively plan and think about when you're young, how do you more effectively plan for
Yes.
your future, and then now that you're maybe at a later stage in life, how can you make sure that you're setting yourself up to be able to move into that next phase comfortably because like it or not, money rules the world, and you've got to have financial wellness and security in order to be able to feel comfortable to move forward. Doesn't mean you got to be a millionaire or anything else. It just means, do I have enough? And we're going to have another amazing guest. It just made me think about Michael Abebe, who's going to come on, and he is just he's been dealing with some family stuff, and he's just such an amazing soul, but he's
Yes.
going to come on, and one of the things that we're going to have him talk about is that idea of being living a more simplistic life. When you talk to Michael and you hear his whole approach is not like suffrage, it's like you don't have to be suffering, but it's a reflection, and especially as a young person, a reflection on stuff and things, like what do you really need in your life? What's really important, and kind of changing that perspective, I think, will be another really good conversation. And it actually ties directly into financial wellness because where you spend your money is a direct correlation to all of those things. So,
And what a sweet soul Michael
oh,
LaBeouf is. I
people are gonna
cannot
love
wait
him.
to
He
have
is
him
such,
on.
yeah, me neither. He's gonna be such a great one, great guest. I've just really that's one of those, my colleague, Scott Montgomery, who's also a co-host with me on his podcast that we do, he always says that, it doesn't matter no matter what. It's not, what you know, it's who you know.
Mhm.
Relationships rule the world. And it is so true. And Michael reached out to me on LinkedIn. We connected. He actually reached out to me about a job. The job didn't pan out, but the relationship remained in place. And I have learned so much from him. And he says he's learned some stuff from me, which is very touching. But
I'm sure that he
but I
has.
really have, gosh, just such a great person, and all of that was through him, reaching out through a network and developing a relationship. So another
I
great
can't
topic
wait
for
to
us to
have
talk
him
about.
on.
Me
Yeah.
either. No, I'm totally on board with you. But
Yeah.
I can't wait to be back with you. And like I said, I love our guests, but I love our conversations as well,
Me
and
too.
just to be able to reflect on this amazing journey you and I have been on. And happy 1 year anniversary to us.
You
Go us, and
too. And
go to our
Logan
producer.
too.
That's right. A shout out to our producer, Logan, and LJM Productions, who does all the hard work for us behind the scenes to
He
make
was
our show
amazing.
all that it is. And we appreciate all of our listeners out there. And Cyndi and I are going to be launching our website. We've teased it out a little bit. We just haven't done an official launch, but we'll be
We
pushing that
will.
out there. Yep, we're going to get that posted out, and hopefully that'll be another great way for us to just continue with our community, and give people an additional place to find information about the Her Resources podcast. So
Thank you for everything, Linda. Thank you to our guests. Oh my goodness. And
yes,
thank you to our community that we have built. We're over 450 people now. I think we're like
yeah,
456 or something.
we are.
So super appreciative that
Me
you spend
too.
time with us, and
Oh,
hope that we
me
can
too.
continue to provide value.
Absolutely. And if you do like the podcast, like, share, subscribe. We're on all of the streaming services. You can also find us out on YouTube, and see us if you want to see our faces. You can see us
Yeah.
on YouTube. Otherwise, on all of the wherever you like to get your favorite podcast, you can find us there. And we can't wait to continue these conversations, and to reach out to all of you. So we wish you all the very best, and I'll look forward to seeing you back in the studio.
Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of the HR Her Resources podcast. We're so happy to have you with us on this journey. Music and production by Logan Misigatis of LJM Productions. We'd also like to thank our intern, Lauren Banas, for creating our logo and supporting our social media postings. If you'd like to connect with Logan or Lauren, you can find their information in the show notes. If you found value in our discussion and think someone else might as well, please follow, subscribe to our LinkedIn, and share with a friend. Until our next episode, please take care and continue to support one another.